You do have to advertise the Patriots, don't you? I mean, it's Katie. It just sounds. If you didn't hear me.
Sorry, man.
I said no. You got to advertise the Patriots, don't you? You just gotta love your pets. Yeah.
All right, we're live now, so I'm gonna go on mute. Hey, Drew. We're just gonna.
Hello.
We are streaming out to YouTube, so we're just waiting for the rest of the gang to join, and then Rachel will get everyone going.
I will sit here quietly.
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, it's starting in 4 minutes, right? Yeah.
Perfect. You can turn it off.
You know how to do it.
Yeah. Yes. So you turn down a little bit.
Saturday at 7 on Maine CW. We've done 7 to 10:30.
think you're sharing your screen. If you're able to stop sharing.
Hello. Hey, Rachel? Hello, Rachel?
I don't believe Rachel's on just yet.
Okay. This is Representative Evangelos, and I don't have a camera on my computer, so I'm a phone-only participant, just so you know. So I guess if I want to chime in, I'll just ask permission.
Yes, perfect.
Huh?
Everybody, because of your attitude?
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. This is Katie Walsh. We're just waiting a couple more minutes for everyone to join, and then Representative Talbot Ross will start off the meeting. As a reminder, we are streaming this meeting to the press and public, and also a reminder to just try to keep your mics muted when you're not speaking. Thank you.
Someone's got a dog.
That's me. That's me.
Apologies, everyone. We'll begin in just a couple more minutes. Thanks for your patience.
Hi, everyone. It is 11:35. We're going to get started. We were waiting for a number of people to join. Looks like they have. My name is Rachel Talbot Ross, and I'm currently the chair of the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Maine Tribal Populations. And it's a pleasure to see you all, and I bid you a good morning. Today, we take what could be described as an unprecedented step in the history of our state, in which policymakers and lawmakers will be led by volunteer members of the community in a process that names and acknowledges racism in the state of Maine. We will, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will take, again, a historic step at analyzing the ways in which racism has permeated our structures, with an emphasis on looking at the way that they've shown up in across systems in disparities. So I thank you very, very much for joining us here today, really to take this step with you. Yeah. Before going any further, I want to make sure that everyone has all the documents they need in order to go through the meeting today, which goes from 11:30 to 1. Also want to make sure that you know that this is being live streamed and recorded. The 5 documents that you will need today is a meeting agenda, meeting agreements, the calendar for this process, the process outline, and legislators have a list of permanent commission members. So before we go any further, I would like to introduce the Permanent Commission, and I start with Keith Bisson.
Keith, I think you're.
Sorry about that. Just saw that. My name is Keith Bisson. I'm president of Coastal Enterprises Incorporated, CEI. We're a community development financial institution based in Brunswick. And I am filling the seat for a community development financial institution. Real honor to serve with my fellow commissioners and for the state of Maine in this role. Thank you.
We're going to try to do this as quickly as possible, and we'll just go in alphabetical order for permanent commission members. So D. Clark. We'll keep going. Ambassador Dana.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mullian Dana. I serve as the Tribal Ambassador for the Penobscot Nation, and I am a tribal representative to the Permanent Commission. It's great to see you all.
Bruce King.
Hi, I'm Bruce King. I work in Lewiston doing workforce development and a resident of Brunswick, and I serve as a community member, historically disadvantaged, as a second-generation Mexican immigrant, and also a formerly incarcerated individual.
Reverend Lewis.
Hello, Reverend Kenneth Lewis, I'm pastor of the Green Memorial African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. I've lived in Portland almost 18 years, in the state of Maine almost 18 years. I am gubernatorial appointment representing faith-based interest on the commission, and happy to be part of this historic process.
Thank you, Reverend Lewis. James.
Hey everyone, I'm James Mile. I'm a policy analyst at the Maine Center for Economic Policy. I'm filling the seat on the commission for someone from an economic policy organization.
Thank you, James. Vice Chief Newell, are you on?
Yeah, good morning. Daryl Newell. I'm the Vice Chief of the Passamaquoddy Tribe at Indian Township up here in Washington County. I'm glad to join you folks again this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chief. One of our newest members, Isaiah.
Hi, I'm Isaiah Reed. I'm a resident of Kingfield, Maine. I'm a student at UMF, and I'm representing the youth population in the commission. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome, Isaiah. I'll ask if Chief Sabatis is with us this morning. Vice Chief Silboy.
Yeah, my name is Richard Silboy. I'm Vice Chief of the Aroostook Band of Micmac. I live in Littleton, Maine, and northern Maine.
Thank you, Vice Chief. Garrett Stewart.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Garrett Stewart. I represent the AFL-CIO. I'm a member of their executive committee, and I am labor rights.
Thank you. Joby and then Ian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joby Doylo. I'm a senior policy advocate with Maine Equal Justice, and I'm honored to serve on the commission in the role representing an organization with expertise in anti-poverty policy.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ian Yaffe. I am the executive director of Mano & Mano. We're based in Millbridge in Washington County, and I'm here representing an organization that serves immigrant communities in Maine.
Thank you. Have I missed any permanent commission members? Thank you. I now would like, if we could, do a quick introduction for the legislators who are on the line. I'd like to start, and unfortunately, there's really no best way to do this. We'll just have to jump in and get through it. But I'd like to start with Representative Craig Hickman, who has helped to lead this process and will continue to help lead all of the work that's going to be done by the state legislature addressing these issues. Representative Hickman.
Good morning, I'm Craig Hickman. I represent District 81, Winthrop, Reedfield, and a part of North Monmouth at the foot of Mount Pisgah, chair of the Ag Committee and the Citizen Trade Policy Commission, and am quite honored and humbled to be doing this unprecedented historical work for the people of the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hickman. For legislators, if you can just jump in, as I said, your name and maybe just the district that you represent would be great. And because I can see Mo Terry on my screen, I'm going to start with the Honorable Representative Terry.
Morning, or yes, still morning, good. Yes, so I am Representative Mo Terry. I represent District 26, which is the western half of Gorham. And I'm really excited to be here.
Have at it, legislators.
So I am Representative Kristen Cloutier. I represent House District 60, which is part of Lewiston. And like Mo, I am super excited to be here.
I'm Nate Libby. I represent all of the people of Lewiston, the state Senate, and serve as Senate Majority Leader. Thank you for the invitation to join this group.
I'm Kathy Breen. I represent 6.5 communities in Cumberland County in the Maine Senate.
I'm Senator Eloise Vitelli. I represent District 23, which is all of Saginaw County and the town of Dresden in Lincoln County, and it's an honor to be with this group. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Troy Jackson. I'm Senate President. I represent Senate District 1, which is probably like 2/3 of Aroostook County up north. I, too, am very honored to be here today.
I'm Denise Tepler. I represent House District number 54, which is the town of Topsom.
Hi, I'm Penny Beebe Center. I represent House District 93, the town of Owl's Head in the city of Rockland, and it's a privilege to be here.
Vicky Dudera, and I represent District 94, Camden, Rockport, and the island of Islesboro. Good to see everybody.
I'm Jay McCrate, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and part of Brunswick in the House District 51. I chair Marine Resources and serve on Veterans and Legal Affairs. And thank you for this opportunity.
Hi, I'm Jim Handy. Sorry, Michelle. Good morning. Go ahead, Michelle.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Dunphy and I represent House District 122.
Good morning, I'm Jim Handy. I represent part of the city of Lewiston, House District 58. I'm also a member of the Committee on Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business, and House Chair of the Committee to study the feasibility of creating basic income security.
Good morning, Representative Tiffany Roberts.
representing House District 6, which is North Berwick and South Berwick.
Good morning. I'm Dave McCrae. I'm from Fort Fairfield and I represent District 148 up in Aroostook County. I live just about 30 miles north of Littleton.
Good morning. My name is Heidi Brooks. I represent House District 61, which is part of Lewiston.
Good morning. I'm Genevieve McDonald. I represent House District 134, which is comprised of almost all of the offshore islands of Penobscot Bay. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Good morning. It's Jeffrey Evangelos in Friendship, House District 91. I serve on the Judiciary Committee and State and Local Government. Got a lot of important work to do with Rachel and the Judiciary Committee regarding our civil liberties. So thanks for doing this and look forward to working with you.
Good morning. Ann Matlack from District 92 in the Mid-Coast area, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Cushing, and Matinicus.
Good morning. This is Lydia Bloom from House District 3 in the southern part in York.
Good morning, all. This is Sarah Pepworth. I represent House District 133, which is the Blue Hill Peninsula.
Good morning. My name is Matt Moonen. I represent part of Portland in the House and serve as the House Majority Leader.
Morning. This is Ann Carney. I represent House District 30, which is part of Cape Elizabeth.
Good morning. This is Tom Harnett. I represent House District 83, which is Gardner and Farmingdale, and very happy to be here to take on this important work. Thank you.
Hi, it's good to see everybody this morning. I'm State Representative Drew Gattini, and I represent part of Westbrook in the Maine House.
Good morning, I'm Justin Schmidt. I represent Senate District 31, which includes the Saco Old Orchard Beach area, and I serve as the Senate Chair of the Government Oversight Committee. Looking forward to our important conversations.
Hi, I'm Senator Susan DeChambeau. I don't know why I'm not, my face is not up there. That's okay. I represent Senate District 32, which is my hometown of Biddeford and 5 surrounding towns. I'm also Senate Chair of Criminal Justice, Public Safety, and it's great to see all of us on board here today. Thank you.
This is Ryan Fecto. I represent House District 11, which is part of Biddeford. I am a constituent of Senator DeChambeau.
I'm Bill Fluker, House District 95, Warren, Hope, Appleton, and a little bit of Union.
I'm Michael Brennan, District 36, which is part of Portland.
My name is Chloe Maxman. I represent District 88, Chelsea, Whitefield, Jefferson, and half of Nobleboro.
Are there any other legislators on the line? Well, thank you all for introducing yourself. I want to also give an opportunity for some of our guests to introduce themselves, part of our planning team. I'd like to start with Carol Kelly, who has been extraordinary in this effort in helping us with the design of this process. I'd like for her to take a moment to introduce herself. Carol.
Thank you, Representative Talbot Ross. Hi, folks. I'm Carol Kelly. I couldn't be more honored to be part of this process in any way that I can be helpful. I helped to set up the flow that we're going to go through today. I do facilitation work and strategic planning with groups around the state, and hopefully what we've created here for this fast-tracked but incredibly important process will be helpful, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
And I'd like for Reggie and Cheryl to introduce themselves as part of the planning team. Reggie.
My name is Reggie Parson. I serve as a legislative aid and policy analyst in the Speaker's office, and happy to serve as a staff resource for this important work.
Thank you for all your help, Reggie. And Cheryl, would you please take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Cheryl Moran, and I am a labor program specialist for the State Workforce Board, Maine Department of Labor. And I have been asked to assist this permanent commission, and glad to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other legislators, permanent commission members, or any guests that are joining us that should be introduced? Have we left anyone out?
Katie's not available at the moment, but just wanted to let you know that she's also part of this too.
Thank you, Reggie. So it is 11:50. If you look at your agenda, we're right on track. We will go into our meeting agreements and the agenda if you all have that available. The Permanent Commission operates off of meeting agreements. We've all accepted them. You have them in the packet that you received. And unless anyone has any objections to these agreements, we will consider them adopted for our work. Anyone have any objections to the meeting agreements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. You do have the agenda in front of you. Are there any motions to revise this agenda in any way? Not seeing any revisions to the agenda, we'll continue to move forward. As it says, the purpose of this informal legislative bill review process is to identify and recommend the highest priority bills currently before the 129th legislature for combating racial disparities. I'd like to just take a brief moment to thank Speaker Gideon and the President of the Senate, Senator Troy Jackson, for their leadership in putting this informal work group together. Also want to acknowledge once again the hard work of the Design and Planning Committee, whom you've met, along with the staff in the House Democratic Office and the staff within the Speaker's office. So I will take a brief moment just to give you some general information about what our work is before us, and then hand it off to Carol Kelly, who will literally walk us through each piece of the process. We will then spend the bulk of our time in conversation, in discussion around how we're going to work together. We have a lot of work to accomplish within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And what I want to make sure that we understand at the outset is our timeline is tight. The information is not perfect. We may not end up in a perfect place, but what I hope you will have as an experience during this process is one that is lasting and meaningful and impactful, and most importantly, a process that allows for us to look at systemic racism in the state and to start to move our work of public policy towards eliminating disparities. So very, very quickly, again, this is an informal process. This is not a legislative standing committee or work group by no means. This is an informal process, but it will take place within 3 phases. We have essentially, you can think of this as 3 phases. And the first 2 phases of our work will include what we're calling a full committee. This is the full committee. There are some folks who were not able to be with us today, but for all intents and purposes, we have a permanent commission, there is a full committee, and then there are legislators. So that's the language. And we will, again, we'll cover this in 3 phases. The full committee will meet for the first 2 phases only. The first phase is what we're calling filtering. And that means we are going to take approximately 450 bills, the bills that are currently before the legislature. We have randomly broken them up into batches of 65 bills. Those 65 bills will go through a filtering tool, an exercise, a filtering tool, that will then hopefully bring that number down to a place where we can assess bills. After the assessing bills, the full committee will hand off the work to the permanent commission, and the permanent commission will take the final 3rd stage in which to make a determination and deliver back to the presiding officers a recommendation for the highest priority bills to be considered should the legislature reconvene. The way in which we'll do this, now that you have a timeline and you can kind of see the process in the 3 phases, we'll talk about how we will be structured. The Permanent Commission currently exists of 14 members. We have paired those members into groups of 2. Each one of those Permanent Commission members that will serve as co-chairs to 7 subcommittees. We total about 70 people. So 7 subcommittees made up of 10 full committee legislators and and Permanent Commission members will do our work for those first 2 phases. So if you can get it, a pair of Permanent Commission members will lead legislators in 7 different subcommittees. You have been randomly assigned a subcommittee, and we're not going to spend time today going through which subcommittee you're on and what 65 bills that you've been, your subcommittee will work on. You will get that information by close of business today. Those subcommittees will work offline, utilizing these 2 tools, the filter tool and an assessment tool. In order to whittle down based on criteria that's been vetted, bills that can then go before the Permanent Commission for a final determination. I just want to make sure, I'll pause here to make sure that that is clear. We will operate with 7 subcommittees, 65 bills per subcommittee, 10 people on each subcommittee. That is essentially the 3 phases of work that we will be doing through this informal process. Again, one of the things I want to emphasize is that all of the bills that we are going to consider were written, debated in many, many ways. Half of them have already been voted on, and so there's a real challenge here in that a lot of the work that we're looking at was written, debated, and determined without this lens. So it is different than what may occur through looking at policy development when you have an eye towards racial equity and justice, when you're using that lens to develop your policy. So I just want to make sure that you understand that this is absolutely after the fact, and so therein lies almost the imperfection built into this process. I'm going to turn it over, seeing no questions, to Carol Kelly. And if you can take out the process outline, we will walk through the process outline. We will then open it up for questions and further review, and make sure that before we all end the meeting today, that we are fully prepared to take this work on starting immediately. Carol, would you please take over and walk us through the process outline, if you would.
Thank you, Representative Talbot Ross. I'm going to flag that I will stop at 10 past 12 in the hopes that we are on time and moving towards the question and answer period. That means I may move too swiftly through sections, so please, that'll be the opportunity to kind of dig in a little bit deeper. But I'm going to give you a high-level overview. Building on Representative Talbot Ross's 3-phase process, you'll also notice in the document you have that there was the planning phase, which has a few little details still underway, but primarily in your process outline, step A and B are well underway, if not complete. So where we're really picking up today is step C, and that's the filtering process, what Representative Talbot Ross called phase 1. And so that, as noted, will be in a subcommittee format. The subcommittees will be asked to use a filtering tool which is standardized across subcommittees, but the subcommittees will have full discretion to decide how many of the 65 bills that they receive they would like to advance to the assessment phase. Certainly the hope is that we, in this filtering process, can go from 454 bills, the daunting 454 bills, to a smaller number, but we are not prescribing what that number would be. And so the subcommittees will have full discretion to do that. The subcommittees will use the filtering tool results as guidance, and then they will have a discussion and they will finalize their list. The process there was agreed that that would be a majority vote in terms of moving the bills into the next phase. What we also built into this was the opportunity, because as Representative Talbot Ross said, you guys will be working with incomplete information at best. This is a process that we're doing quickly and with imperfect inputs, but high value. So again, we appreciate that you guys are working this through with us in this way. There is a built-in reconsideration process, which I want to flag for you. If there is a bill that the subcommittee does not advance, it can be, a reconsideration will be allowed. There will be a 48-hour period to do that. And any committee, any member of this full committee can certainly ask for a reconsideration, but within the time frame. The full committee, this full committee, will vote on that reconsideration. The slate of bills that the subcommittee advances will then go through this phase 2 analysis phase, which is an assessment tool that's been created and will be provided to you in your packets this afternoon. I should actually back up and say that the electronic filtering process is going to start tonight. So you will have, you'll receive a packet of materials tonight, which will be your subcommittee teammates, your list of bills, and the tool itself. You will get a link to how to get more information on the bills, and then you will have until the morning, 8 a.m. on the morning of the 14th, next week, which is Tuesday, to complete your filtering, your electronic filtering survey. And that's how the information will be compiled so that the committee, that your subcommittee, I should say, on Wednesday can have a discussion. So from once the decisions are made about which bills advance and which bills do not, the subcommittees will then do an assessment of the remaining bills. It's a fairly detailed assessment document. It's one page, but it allows for that populating of content, of detail. And so we are hoping, certainly you'll see that 65 is probably a big number. We're hoping that whatever your subset of bills is, that you will have the ability within your subcommittees to take on this task and get each of the bills assessment created. And then from there, the subcommittees will brief the full committee. This group will break those briefings into 7 chunks. So 3 will happen on one meeting and 4 will happen in the next meeting. And you'll brief this committee, this full committee, on the bills that remain in your subcommittee. And that will be, again, because of time, you know, a pretty rapid fire process, but it's a chance to kind of ask questions, get a handle on it. From there, this full committee will use a ranking tool that we have created that will allow you to gauge a bit more quantitatively ease and impact of the potential bills that remain in the process. And the results of that ranking process will then be sent to the Permanent Commission for their final discussions, deliberations, engagement with constituencies and stakeholders. And then they will use a 100% consensus process to develop their final list of recommendations. All this is going to happen in what is going to feel like a minute and a half, but by the end of the month, we're gonna have this done. So again, couldn't be more grateful for you guys stepping up to be part of this process. It's so exciting, and I think I'll just stop there and just have more time for questions and discussion. Representative Talbot Ross, do you want me to go on and on about certain sections, or should we pause?
What I think would probably be most helpful for legislators is just to dive in and make it as messy as we need to be to get through the process, because it is very quick. You have an assignment already that's due by Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. We just need to get through any questions and discussions so that everyone feels comfortable moving through. So I would like to open it up for discussion. Again, we've got 3 phases. Full committee is in the first 2 phases that will happen over the next 2 weeks. You'll be voting electronically on 65 bills. I don't know if you'd like to go through. One other quick thing is that we're working on a standard set of definitions so that when you do your subcommittee work, we're all operating from the same language and understanding in which to do these the filtering. And we are putting together that you will receive tonight in your packet. We're putting together some resource materials. So national data, state data, as much as localized data as we can get, along with links to articles and research that has happened lately, I mean, in the last 10 years. We want to make sure that you have access to whatever information or resources that you need. And of course, we are all available to help you at any point in the process.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to do this given our rush status, but can you kind of give us a really quick run through of what the electronic filtering system, like what it's trying to capture?
Yeah, Carol?
Sure. Yes, so the filtering tool asks provides, I should say, 10 criteria. And those criteria, I'll read you guys a couple examples. I won't read all of them, but legislation has potential to reduce inequities in income and access to capital or loans. Legislation has potential to reduce disproportionate violence and or incarceration rates. Legislation has potential to create positive systemic and or structural change in generational living conditions. There are 10 of these. And you will be asked to contemplate this criteria. We can certainly provide a form where you can actually put check marks or a yes, no, or a true, false. But at the end, you're basically asked one question, which is on a ranking of, or a scale of 1 to 5, do you believe that the legislation you're considering it has extremely high potential to do this, or extremely low potential to combat racial inequities, particularly systemic or structural inequities? So it's a one question tool, but it has 10 criteria that you'll be considering in that process.
I have a question about definitions, first of all. When you refer to, Carol, full committee, I imagine that is all of us who are gathered here today. And if you're referring to the commission, it's the commission members.
That is correct.
Okay, great. And one other question, I noticed that there are numbers next to our names on the list. I suppose that indicates what group we're in. Are those broken down by any kind of jurisdictional, say, group 1 is healthcare, group 2 is labor?
So Representative Handy, no, it was randomly selected and grouped. And part of that is so that we will work in different teams. The other thinking is that those who are content experts in, say, education may know their bills. They should know their bills better than others, and that may in some way influence the outcome. So we're really trying to make sure that there is as fair and equitable consideration of all bills at all times.
I have a question about bills that we might be filtering. Under has the potential to reduce racial inequities, let's say, are we talking about only the bill as it exists, or if it were to be amended in some way? For example, we're collecting data a lot in HCIFS on healthcare, but almost none of that data is being collected about racial disparities currently. It's mostly about costs. And while costs are important, there might be a place there for collecting data about racial disparities. So I guess I'm asking, are we only judging what is, or are we looking at the potential of what could be?
So that's a great question, Representative Templer. As you can see, because of the time frame, we're a little restricted in the ways in which we can amend bills during this process. But as you work in a subcommittee, if you have knowledge of an amendment, or the committee actually wants to get more information from a sponsor regarding or suggesting an amendment, that is absolutely welcomed and encouraged. Remember that we are working simultaneously while some committees are starting to meet. Right now, IF&W and HHS are meeting. And so there isn't the time frame doesn't allow for an equal, for this to influence that work right now. So to the extent possible that the subcommittees want to consider an amendment, it would have to be done fairly quickly, very quickly, in fact. And remember that these are recommendations that go back to the legislature. So any amendments for these bills happen on the House or Senate floor in order to make them really specifically address disparities. So when we make recommendations to the state legislature, if there are amendments to those bills that would further enhance them, then sponsors can make that pitch to the permanent commission at that time. I hope that helps. We are so restricted in time that it will be impossible to debate, as you know, 400 bills. Yeah. And so to the extent possible that amendments can be considered, we encourage the subcommittees to do so.
So I understand what you're saying. I guess the only addition I would have to that is a comment that perhaps it would be helpful to have notes on bills that could have been made more equitable by amendment, so that the legislature can keep that in mind for the future.
Thank you, Representative. Absolutely. We are, when you're in your subcommittees, I will say that each bill we will document as to its end result, so that you'll have a form for each bill. So there is, after getting through that filtering exercise, where there is literally a ranking of 1 through 5, the subcommittees will determine which bills move forward. And for those bills that go through an assessment process, the assessment tool, each bill will have its own form in which that kind of documentation will be made.
Thank you.
Why a bill moved forward, why it doesn't move forward, and most definitely what could make it better in order for it to specifically address and impact racial disparities.
So Representative Talbot Ross, just to follow up on what Representative Tepler has been talking about, it sounds like there's some limited opportunities to coordinate or to build on the work that the committees, the legislative committees, will be doing and what this full committee is looking to do, but that there may not be full opportunity to integrate the decisions that are made on each bill. given just the tight time frame for both processes. In other words, they're happening somewhat simultaneously. Is that?
That is correct. Carol, Carol, or I think Reggie is on the line. Representative Hickman, would you like to answer that in any way?
I would just toss out Representative Talbot Ross, and you started to reference this, that the assessment tool, which is really taking those same filtering criteria and reposing them as questions. So for example, how does the legislation reduce inequities in income and access to capital? That has a couple additional questions at the end where one is, what amendments will the legislation require to maximize its impact? And what are the likely costs and potential funding sources for this legislation? So the attempt in the assessment tool is to give a slightly fuller picture to the degree possible of what we know about the bill and its status. So hopefully that helps. We can certainly add a row for what else would you like to say about this bill, or what could make this bill better in the future, because I do love the idea that we create a historical reference point.
I think we got a question earlier about the actual subcommittee work, because most of it you will do at your leisure, because you're literally reading through bills or looking up bills and then using that electronic tool for ranking. The subcommittee chairs will call you all together so that there is a discussion at each one of these junctures.
Yes, it's Dave McCrae. So I understand the process to be the subcommittees will rank these 1 through 5, 1 being high priority, and make our recommendations to this large group, which will make the recommendations to the committee at large, the big committee. But the ones that end up with a 5, which means they have little impact on what we are about as this committee, that doesn't have any bearing as to whether that bill should or should not pass, correct?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Okay.
We are going through a process, Representative, to get the highest priority bills that will address racial disparities and have some impact on confronting systemic racism. But those bills that don't make it to that highest priority, all of these bills go through the exact same process if and should we go back into session.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Rachel?
Yes.
Rachel, this is Anne Marie.
Hi, Representative.
How are you? I have a question. It's kind of a mechanical question. It's the online tool that we'll be using. Can you use it from an iPad? Will it matter? I mean, that's kind of a stupid question, but it's like one of those technology things that some of us maybe not as good as others at it. And I just want to make sure it'll be something that isn't dependent on a certain operating system or anything.
So that's a question for Reggie.
Reggie, you're muted, but this is Megan, and I might be able to answer that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Because I actually created it. So Rep. Mastracchio, it's actually a SurveyMonkey tool, which you can use from any mobile device, phone, tablet, email, or computer, anything. So it should be real easy. Just a drop down, you make a selection, move on.
Thank you.
Megan, this is Carol Kelly, and I wonder if you could also answer a question that I just realized when Representative McCrae asked about the ranking and referenced 1 and 5. Did we set up the scoring as 5 being the highest, extremely high, and 1
Yep.
being extremely low? Okay.
Yep.
So just to be clear, everybody, it's flipped. Yeah. What that's going to do, it's going to pay off, because at the end, when we do our priority setting on ease and impact, those high scores, this is going to be the reverse, but the high scores are going to end up in the upper right quadrant our priority setting tool, which bills pop out as highest priority. So thank you, Megan.
Sorry about that.
Hey, Rachel.
Yeah.
It's Representative Cloutier. How are you?
Hi.
So I'm just wondering if you can speak to what the process is after we're done. So who the recommendations go to, how that might affect AFA and decisions they're making there, and how, sort of how these rankings play a role when if and when we come back and consider legislation from the broader perspective.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Representative. And I'll ask Representative Hickman if he'll join me in answering it, because I only know so much about this. But once the full committee hands off to the Permanent Commission, there is a place in the process where members of the Permanent Commission will consult with an advisory council that we've put together, made up of diverse racial and ethnic community members across the state. We also consult with our own constituents. There are folks that are members of the Permanent Commission that are representing bodies of people and or industry. So we will take what you all give us, what we all create together, and we will vet it through members of the public who are most impacted by these policies to the extent possible. After that vetting, the Permanent Commission will meet, and we have our own priority setting tool that we will take those bills and put through a priority setting process, and then come out with a list of bills that then have to have consensus, 100% consensus by the Permanent Commission to move on to the list. I just want to give a voice because I'm not sure if we highlighted this enough, and that is during this process, during the subcommittee process, any member of a subcommittee with 2/3 support from their committee members can ask to have a bill reconsidered. So a bill can have more than one viewing by the subcommittee if a legislature feels that it needs additional information came and it needed another review. So we want to give that subcommittee process, try to be as nimble as possible, but also, being as transparent and fair and equitable in our review of each and every bill.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please, Representative Hickman.
Yes, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to sort of address some of these questions. Representative Cloutier, consider this preparing the soil for this work. And because we are in a time frame that is very constrained and whatever work we have will be limited when we go back, whatever rises to the top of the heap that the Permanent Commission decides will be put into their official recommendation to the legislature. They may recommend one bill, they may recommend 5, they may recommend 20. Then we as the legislature will do what we do with that recommendation. We can take it or not. But what we are also asking, and it hasn't been said yet, I don't think, is that for all of us to focus on the process and not our own work. Because we know when we get back into the legislature, we will lobby for our own bills, whether they have something to do with disparities or not. So this process is a self-education process where we are just going to do the work, make our recommendations as subcommittees to the Permanent Commission. The Permanent Commission will make its recommendation to the legislature, and then we will be back in control of the outcome of all of this. So I'm just going to ask all of us to really consider putting our egos aside and leaving our own bills to someone else to look at. And obviously, if a subcommittee asks us to provide more data or detail or intent on our bills, then that's fine. But I just want to be clear that this process is not about whether we are going to get our bills passed. It is to see if we have anything in front of us now that we can harvest, but mostly to plant all of the seeds for the 130th. Because those of you who will come back will have to take this work and actually move it even past what we're going to do in August. I hope that helps.
And one thing that I just want to give, and I don't know if James will give a little bit voice to data, but I really think that, to do it after the filtering exercise, to really do some assessment. If you look at the assessment tool, it actually asks how. It says, how does this legislation reduce inequities in income and access to capital loans? That's number one on the assessment. So, the only real way to answer that is to have as much qualitative data, the lived experience of folks, along with quantitative data, that so the actual outcomes. So to the extent possible, we will make sure you have that information. It will be very difficult for anyone to go through this without understanding what data exists that can describe and articulate the disparity the legislation is trying to combat. So you will have as much access to that information as possible so that you can really have an informed decision about the how. I realize that this is a little daunting to be making decisions about bills without having really being steeped in that data and really having an opportunity like we normally do with a bill, in which folks with lived experience can talk to you about what this means. So absent of that process, for looking at bills through a racial lens, a racial equity lens, we will try to support you in that determination as much as possible, because it feels very daunting to me, and it must feel the same to you to be making these determinations about bills and not having as much information as possible related to our focus. I'd like to find out if any permanent commission members would like to comment on the process, provide more information to legislators. And so I guess I will pick on James. James, can you talk a little bit about data that we have available here in the state?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I've already started compiling some data for this group and some like subcommittees to use. I think what folks will find as they go through the bills is that there are going to be some gaps in sort of the data that's available. Sometimes there'll be cases where, as you say, sort of the lived experience and the qualitative data is just as important as what we have in terms of numbers and what's measured. I certainly think subcommittees can consider sort of where there are gaps that can be food for thought in terms of what the state could be doing more to get this information, or maybe this information is out there and it's not public yet. And there's certainly going to be some cases where we don't have state level indicators for some of these things, but we have we know what national patterns are like, and sort of in most cases, all the indicators show that sort of Maine is not immune from a lot of the effects of systemic racism. So there'll be certainly be cases where we point to kind of national indicators, but they have some application for Maine as well.
And I'll ask Ambassador Dana if she might give a little bit of comment about data as it would relate to tribal populations, and maybe Vice Chief Newell. I didn't see Vice Chief Syllaboy, but oh yeah, Vice Chief Syllaboy. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what kind of data we should be looking at in terms of evaluating this with our tribal populations.
Yeah, I think that, we've talked a lot in the commission about how we may differ from other groups, but I think when we're looking at equality across these different landscapes, we're going to see the Maine tribal nations fall in a lot of the same disparities when you look at incarceration rates, poverty, access to some economic gaining mechanisms. I think that you'll find we have a lot of the same symptoms, even though the roots of the diseases may be different. For the tribes, I think the answer to a lot of our issues is this tribal sovereignty concept, and how we define it and how we acknowledge it and how we kind of act it out. And so we're seeing that in the big LD 2094 bill that talks about each one of the different jurisdictional areas. And Vice Chief Newell and I were on a call before this where we actually zeroed in on the incarceration rates. And we would like to explore that a little bit more because we are such a small part of the population, and we do have some of the largest rates, I think. So we're both very interested in that. And I think that the tribes, I'm really happy were included in this process because we are going to find nuances as to how we differ. But I think that it's a great opportunity for us to talk about, how we've been treated in a racial equity sense. So I think that the other tribal representatives can weigh in here, but that would be my take on it. Thank you, Representative.
Absolutely. Vice Chief Newell or Vice Chief Silboy?
Yes, I appreciate Ambassador Dana's assertion and offerings that our importance or our greater weight is the sovereignty issue, which is a general issue. I mean, LD 2094, for instance, breaks down the relationship between the tribes, plural, and the state of Maine, and it makes it our best effort to resolve those differences, those issues that we have in terms of sovereignty. So, I very well may be seated in a committee that doesn't address native community, native people issues with the bills that we'll be voting with. So I would just like to reiterate Ambassador Dana's assertion that sovereignty is of the greatest importance to us, to have an equal government-to-government relationship with the state of Maine and others, of course, but that in particular. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chief. I'll just check in with Vice Chief Silboy if you wanted to make any comment.
Yes, I guess I would just like to say that Ambassador Dana pretty much covered everything. Excuse me just a second. I can't talk. Damn. The timing's always good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess Ambassador Dana pretty much covered it. We all seem to have the same problems. We face the same problems and same difficulties. My tribe especially has a different relationship with the state of Maine. The other tribes are involved with the Maine Implementing Act, and the Aroostook Band of Micmacs never signed off on that. So we had, I guess we have a lack of relationship with the state of Maine, but some of these bills will be very important if they pass, the ones that we recommend, and hopefully when the Aroostook Band of Micmac get a relationship or create a relationship with the state of Maine, that all of these bills will play a part in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chief. I'm going to turn our attention. It's 12:33, so we have a little bit more time to look at and discuss this. If you can pull up the calendar, we can just make sure that we're going through the timeline once again. So today is Friday, July 10th. As you can see, we have projected that we would get a full report back to Speaker Gideon and Senator Jackson by August 5th. So that is 4 weeks from today. So I want to make sure that you all feel ready for the work, that you understand the process. You can see some of the deadlines. Essentially, you're with us for a couple of weeks during the filter and assessment process. And then we will engage the public and then make some final determinations. Any questions about looking at the calendar? You'll see that some committees are already have been filled in, the committees that are meeting simultaneously. There may be some others that get added, but any questions at all about our time frame, the deliverables, and
Madam Chair, I have a question.
yes, certainly.
Are you picking teams this afternoon? So you haven't picked teams yet, correct?
We have not released that information.
Okay.
Mainly because we didn't want to get caught up in the teams during this meeting, out of respect for getting legislators up to speed on the process. But you'll have that by the end of the day.
Thank you.
So this it's amazing to me with all these legislators on a line that we do not have more commentary. Politicians like to speak, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my colleagues. Really want you to feel welcomed in this process, comfortable and safe in this process. Really want to make sure you know that we are working hard to make sure that it is transparent and equitable. As Representative Hickman said, it is not a time for us to do individual lobbying and advocating for our own bills. And I know that each and every one of you will respect that. One of the things that I'm not sure you're aware of, but you probably should be aware of, is that the permanent commission members were not appointed, if you will, for their expertise in the legislative process or in 400 bills, the process of bill making. So to the extent possible that you can help permanent commission members out in your subcommittees with this process, I think that would they would welcome that. And it is not going to be perfect. There's just no way for that to happen. I'll give a little bit of voice because I think that it was asked in the chat, and I'll ask Representative Hickman to join me in answering it about this process moving forward, or potentially being something that could be used in the 130th. Obviously, I don't have the answer to that. I know Senator Jackson is on the call. And all I can do is give voice to, I think what everybody knows is we have to just go through this and see what happens. I know that there's commitment by the Speaker and the President of the Senate to address systemic racism as we move forward, and we'll get to an election and then see what happens. But the Permanent Commission will advises the state legislature. It's an independent arm in which we advise 3 branches of government. And we will continue to do our work in this vein, no matter what happens in the next legislative session. I don't know if Representative Hickman wants to give any comments to that, but we will do our best in the next 4 weeks, and then we'll evaluate and see what happens for doing this similar types of processes in the near future.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. You have said it all.
Representative Talbot Ross, may I add or point out something in the calendar?
Please.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I just wanted to flag, and I know I'm just noticing in the calendar that it doesn't really reflect what I would say is the tremendous, if not bulk of the work that you folks will be asked to do really occurs between July 17th and July 22nd, because that is your window of time to document or assess and document the assessments for all of the remaining bills. And so if you were to set aside a weekend this month to really focus on this project, that would probably be the one, because it will, each subcommittee will divide up the remaining bills among you to complete the assessments, so that by the time we get to July 22nd, 100% of those assessments are completed and the committee briefings can begin. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
just a quick question, and I think I put it in, I may have sent it, I'm not sure, but any thought on resolves and bonds and how you might approach assessing resolves and bonds? Just thought I would ask that question.
sure. And it's Megan still on the call? Yep. That is a good question. I think
Still here. I think so. The list that we have created the surveys from, this over 400 plus bill list that we're working from, does include bonds and resolves. It includes every bill that is live in front of the legislature at this time. So those would be part of the consideration that this group will undertake.
So it is now 12:40. If seeing any other discussion, questions, thoughts, maybe not just on this process, but you know, the world has just gone through an incredible time period that lands us doing this work together today and moving forward, and it's a lot to process. So any thoughts or comments at all about this period of history that we are all in and the journey that we're getting ready to take together? I welcome any comments at all, recognizing that this is unprecedented.
Rachel?
Yes, please.
Denise Tepler. I want to say thank you to you, to the commission, and to Carol and Megan Rochello for this organization. I mean, this sounds like a really good process. I'm really impressed with the tools that you presented us with, and I'm very excited that we can tackle something with a lens this broad and maybe really make a difference in something. That's very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Rachel.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, it's Donald Loring from Penobscot Nation, Elderin, from the governor's office as well. I'd just like to say that this commission is hugely important. And I'm really, really thankful, Rachel, that you have put this bill forward and got it through and have done one hell of a job. So I look forward to the results of this.
I thank you, Honorable Donna Loring, and we would be remiss if we did not thank the governor for the support that she's expressed and given to the Permanent Commission in order for it to do its work. We thank you for participating in this meeting today. Thank you. 12:43. Anything else? So we will move on. Please.
I will actually say something because I always have to add my two cents. I just want to say that, you know, this is, in terms of the moment in history that we're in right now, I think that we have two forces that are kind of pushing us in this direction. I want to recognize those. And the reason that I do is because I think it's pertinent to this, to what we're trying to embark on, you know, and one is absolutely, you know, the youth primarily in the streets who are giving rise to a lot of this. And I think it's very important that we make a real effort to engage them in the process as much as possible. But I think the other challenge that we're going to be facing is because of COVID and isolation. You know, I'm not working in the same neighborhoods. I'm not walking around the same neighborhoods. So it's going to take extra effort in order to engage constituents. And I just really want to challenge everybody to really put in as much effort as possible to do that. I'm finding it challenging to do this work from home. So I'm having to find workarounds, but I definitely am not going to allow myself not to be doing everything I can to engage primarily the youth who are driving this. So I just want to put that front and center, really listen to the people who are out there and make their needs heard.
Thank you. Thank you. I know that the majority leader, Representative Moonen, is joining us, and Representative Fecto is joining us. I don't know, along with President of the Senate, I don't know if there are any, Representative Moonen has been part of the design team and the organizing. I don't know if we've left anything out, Representative, or we will move on to next steps in summary and then close out our first initial meeting.
Rachel, the only thing I would do is reiterate thanks to the staff for all of the work that they've done to make this happen. I'm excited to get started and just appreciate all the work that's gone into this from all of them, in addition to the members. So.
Thank you, Representative. So as you know, the next steps, by close of business today, you will get all of the information that you need. Thank you, Representative Fecto. All the information that you need to start your work tonight. Your first assignment, if you will, is due by 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning. That information will then get analyzed and sent right back to you. And then you will hear from your subcommittee co-chairs to move you along and to convene. Those subcommittees, by the way, will make their own schedule of how you all want to meet and when, if in fact you need additional meetings. But you'll get all of those materials by close of business today, and then the resource list and the data will be accumulated over time. I just am really proud to take this journey with everyone. I think we have an incredible opportunity, and everyone who is involved in this process has volunteered, and so that's a really big statement that we have legislators who self-identified and wanted to be part of any work that would start to address systemic racism. Legislators were eager to start to do some work and to be able to communicate back to their constituents their commitment to this work. It is not a sprint. We will be in this work for a long time. And I do believe that we've got the right team here. I'm grateful that it's a bipartisan process, that we will have both Democrats, Independents, and Republicans joining us for this work, and the public can have full trust in the process that we're getting ready to go through. If there are any other lingering questions, Carol, I'll check in with you. Are you all set?
I am all set. Thank you so much to everyone.
Megan, Representative Hickman, Reggie, anything we're leaving out?
I just think people are anxious to get started. That's what I think. And this is beautiful.
Which is great. And I'll just check in very briefly with.
Yep, I think we are all set. We'll get emails out to everyone with their committee assignments and survey links by the end of the day today.
Great. Hearing no lasting thoughts or comments, questions, you can call on Representative Hickman or I anytime, Reggie anytime. And I just want to give additional thanks to the Permanent Commission for its members to step up quite quickly and very defiantly in volunteering for this process that will take up all of their Fridays during the summer. So that's something, right? That's a real testimony. But thank you all for joining us here today. And I do very quickly, if one of the Permanent Commission members would move for adjournment.
So moved.
Need a second.
Second.
It's been moved, properly second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.